Hi Bio4 and welcome to chapter 21 on the blood vessels. Sort of a continuation of the previous chapter, but here we go. If we want to look at the blood vessels, what we're going to have to look at, we're going to get away from the heart a little bit and we're going to move towards what do all these arteries look like? What are they named? When they're large, they're arteries. When they're smaller, they become arterioles. And then they're going to branch and branch and branch and become capillaries. And in the capillary, it's when they're distributing oxygen. So we're going to change from having these red vessels that are full of oxygen to the leftovers, which are blue and still have oxygen in them, but way less. So when you look at your hand and you might see some blue veins in it, it's because the light, when it hits that blood, iridesces slightly differently when it's low in oxygen, so it's going to look slightly bluer. So these are very tiny veins. They will join up together to make bigger veins and finally come back into the right side of the heart and go back to the lung, and it'll recharge with oxygen. So this is the entire chapter here in this one slide, right? What do these all look like? What do they do? What are they named? And then in between is this other system that we have, which is also like a small circulatory system, but notice how it's not continuous. Here we could take a drop of blood and come all the way here and then circle it all the way around. I'd come down this one, I would be able to make a circle all the way. But when we're looking at these little vessels here that are part of the lymph, they seem like they end up in dead ends. So we'll talk a little bit about those also. For now, let's move on. So blood vessels are carrying blood away from the heart. If they're carrying blood away from the heart, they are an artery, okay? I will say this to you a million times and you will still sometimes get it wrong. It's an artery or an arteriole if it's small. So it's a convention. If it's carrying blood away from the heart, it's an artery. It's transporting then, they're transporting blood to the tissues, but they're going to do that via the capillaries, very tiny, smaller than a hair of yours, a head hair. And then they're returning the blood to the heart via these veins and venules. Okay, so returning is vein and venules. Okay, we want to be able to dissect one of these vessels and take it, and in cross-section, if you were to just take this tube and cut across it like you're cutting a big loaf of bread down the middle, looking at it in cross-section, what are you going to see? Well, the innermost layer that you'll see is the layers are all called tunicas. So if we take them from in to out, we'll be able to see that the inner layer is the endo layer, right? It's the endothelium, and also called the tunica interna because it's in the inside. And all vessels are going to have that. They're going to have that liner, the tunica interna. And these are simple squamous epithelial cells. You remember what those are, what squamous cells are. And this is a really important liner because it's going to have a quality which allows it to repel cells. You don't want your blood to be sticking to the inside of these vessels. You would need a roto-rooter to come along and undo them, right? Because that's asking for a clot. So like in your pipes, you want things to flow. So these epithelial cells are able to prevent sticking, and that's a very important quality. Okay, so then that was the middle layer, the innermost layer. Let's go to the thickest middle layer. That would be the tunica media. And this is muscle. This is smooth muscle. And then it has some collagen and elastic fibers, which are going to maintain the pliability of that structure. But what happens when you have muscle? When you have muscle, you can contract. So if you can contract, you can make that vessel, the diameter, become smaller. And if the diameter becomes smaller, you are vasoconstriction. And then you can relax it and you vasodilate. Okay? Super important. because that way you're going to be able to shunt blood to parts of the body that need the blood. So while you're digesting, you're going to have to vasodilate in those organs and move blood to that area. While you're not, you're going to vasoconstrict and move blood to maybe your arms or legs, to somewhere else. So that's tunica media. And then the outermost layer is the tunica externa, and that's connective tissue. And we're going to look at what this looks like if you were to make drawings of it. So look at the layers of an artery, okay? And I've listed them for you in terms of, does it have an endothelium? Oh yeah, a little bit. Does it have elastic tissue? Oh yeah, quite a bit more. Does it have smooth muscle? Oh, yep, even more. And does it have fibrous tissue? Some, but still more than endothelium. And you would be able to see, endothelium in blue, you'd be able to see that elastic tissue, allow it to retract back down again, like an elastic can when you release it. And then you'd be able to see a lot of smooth muscle here in red. And then you'd be able to see some fibrous tissue on the outside. Okay. Compare that we just saw now to an arteriole, a little one. So these are going to branch out and get smaller and smaller and smaller, right, as they distribute to different organs and parts of the body and muscle. What happens when they get tiny? Do they still have an endothelium? Oh, absolutely. All of them have to have that. Do they have any muscle around them? Look, this is all red. Yes, they have muscle, but not much elastic tissue or fibrous tissue. Important to know that. Make a note of that. Now we're going to compare it to a capillary. Well, if you know the function of a capillary is to be able to distribute, right? For example, it's going to distribute oxygen here, right? This is coming with arterial blood. It's going to distribute oxygen. Maybe it's going to take in carbon dioxide. So we're going to have it coming in here, and it's going to have to be able to be permeable to those gases and to nutrients. So do you want 4 thick layers? No, you don't. You want an endothelium, which is this, a cell next to a cell next to a cell, making this lining, right? This is the lining. Notice how that's a nucleus there. This is the actual cell formed together to make an endothelium and nothing else. It's 1 cell thick. You need it to be that way. When you look at a vein, what happens? We compare again. Does it have endothelium? Everything has endothelium, a venule and a vein. Do they have elastic tissue? If it's a big vein, yes. Little, no. Does it have muscle? Yes, but notice it's less than that of an artery. Yes, it has muscle, but not as much as an artery. Yeah, they are actually a little floppy. These veins are a little floppy. When we see them in our cadavers, you can squeeze it very easily and it sort of loses its shape easily. And they have fibrous tissue, so this is the outer coating. So a venule doesn't have the muscle or the elastic tissue. This is all of them compared, right? And whereas I would never ask you what these numbers are, this is very helpful for you to see how is an artery different from a vein? How is an arteriole different from a venule? So notice these and study these. Okay, I'm going to stop this first video right here. We'll continue in part 2. Thanks for listening. Take care. Bye.